So this is actually the second time I've recorded this audio because the story developed, and it actually developed in what I think is a good way, and actually makes me less sad to have to report on all this stuff. So earlier, I don't know, a couple hours ago at the time of recording, James Gunn came to Twitter and was like, hey, I lost a buddy to alcoholism, and made a big post about it. It just sucks when people die, especially when they're close to you. I think even if you're not necessarily close to your friends or family, Kevin Conroy's passing, or there's certain people who meant something to us in our lives that it hurts, right? So I went online to vent. It happens. We all do it. And someone showed up and started being mean in the comments. And the person initially presents himself as a Zack Snyder fan. Immediately, everyone is calling him out. James Gunn fans, Zack Snyder fans, everyone in between. People often forget that there's more than just like a binary yes, no for Snyder Gunn. There's like an enormous swath of opinions and preferences. But anyway, everyone's calling the guy out because, he's being miserable. Even if you don't like a director, when they're grieving someone is not the time to do this. And I've said this a lot during like Zack Snyder's American Foundation for Suicide Prevention posts. He'll post something like, hey, donate now to the Autumn Snyder charity fund or whatever. And it'll be inundated with people saying, so sorry for your loss, but you make horrible movies, never come back to DC. Or one guy, which this one always bothered me, told Zack Snyder that he hopes his daughter rots in hell. I never liked that. That one stuck with me. That is such a hateful thing for a parent to say to another parent. That one bothered me. Anyway, in the first version of this video, this is the part where I went in and I disproved the fact that he's a Snyder fan. At most, he's just a mentally unwell person that latches onto personalities. But he doesn't represent anything that's in congruity with Snyder fans, the overall fandom movement, Zack Snyder himself, the themes of his movies. He's just a weirdo online. And in fact, there's proof that he, at least at one point, was a James Gunn fan. But largely, he was a fan. He called him the GOAT, things like that. And that was my way of saying, like, we shouldn't use one individual person as a retroactive vindication for how someone acts, right? If you spent 12 years hating Zack Snyder, don't pretend like this guy today is the reason that you did that and the reason you should have 12 more years to do it. It's disingenuous. It's confirmation bias at best and just manipulation and lying most often. And in that video, I went pretty detailed. I brought up the fake severed head stuff that people created to try and make Snyder fans look worse. I talk about how I call those things Zack Ops, and it went on and on. But I'll just use James Gunn and his response because I think he wraps it up pretty well. This isn't fans of Zack. It's one person who obviously has some personal issues that are deeper than can be dealt with here, and for which I hope that person gets some relief, and for which I don't think attacking that person helps. I kind of disagree. I think attacking him feels pretty good. When you're nasty to someone, I don't fucking like that. I don't like bullies. I request people don't do. Oops, well, sorry, James, already broke that one. Right now, I only feel grateful for everyone who has shown me compassion in a difficult moment, despite what we may or may not agree upon regarding casting, comics, politics, or whatever. I'm actually incredibly proud of this response, even if maybe it is a little too corporate sounding for my taste. Maybe I'm just someone who doesn't like, after all those sorry we delayed the game or we launched it buggy responses, I'm just kind of over corpo speak. But I think this was a classy way to handle the situation. And he's done it before. In the past, he's said, hey, generally, I don't know why people don't like Snyder fans, but they seem pretty cool to me. You shouldn't attack them. So I thought, at the very least, he's doing the bare minimum to keep things positive, and he's doing more than the last people at DC and Warner Brothers ever did, where it was, oh, Shazam 2 flopped, blame the Snyder fans. Oh, no one saw Birds of Prey, Snyder cult ruined it. Like, it was a very, that was a rough time to be a fan. So to have a studio executive, for the first time in what I can remember, step out in front of something that's clearly about to swell into a huge anti-Snyder sentiment and be like, no, this is just a guy. He's just a dude. And he sucks, and that's not an excuse to hate an entire fandom. Frankly, kind of shocking. And you know what? If this turns into the James Gunn redemption arc, where he turns into being a decent human being who still admittedly casts some people in plastic costumes that don't make a lot of sense to me, you know what? I'm fine with disagreeing with someone creatively, as long as they're a decent human being, And I've always said that I believe that people should be allowed to redeem themselves and turn over a new leaf and start a new life. Not just a second chance, but maybe a third or a fourth. I believe that that's kind of the synthesis of superheroes and of people like Batman, who himself has overcome a lot of personal issues that he's fallen off the wagon with. Superman, who's constantly trying to save criminals. I mean, they both are. Wonder Woman just kind of decapitates people, but she has her heart in the right place. I feel like, I maybe didn't always vibe with other DC directors and like the things they made, but I didn't have a personal vendetta against them because, they seemed like they were decent human beings. Like Wonder Woman 1984. I wouldn't call it a good movie. It has some good scenes in it, but not a good movie overall. Not for me. Honestly, kind of a racist movie, but whatever. However, I didn't have any beef with Patty Jenkins. She seems like a very nice person. So the idea that James Gunn is maybe doing more of a proactive stance of like, hey, stop this divisive thing. Even if Warner Brothers finally did the math and realized they need a united fandom to turn a profit, which, by the way, we've been saying for years, I'll take it because it's a piece, right? Like we can finally have some congruity amongst the fans, agreeing to disagree. All preferences are valid. The things that Snyder fans have been preaching for a hot minute, admittedly, yeah, sure, not all of them. Some of them are still pretty bitter about the way they were treated. Time heals all wounds. Give them time. The majority of people are just like, bro, it's a multiverse. That means multiple universes. Let's just do that shit, man. So I'm pretty big on this. And again, yeah, no, I'm not going to use this as the guy is only doing this because it turned out the guy was secretly a Gunn fan the whole time. I don't care if he was a Gunn fan the whole time and recently started pretending to be a Snyder fan like all those other fake accounts. I don't care. James Gunn got in front of this guy and he called it out and he stopped what would have been an enormous social media shitstorm for the foreseeable future. Because there's still, like I said, the pictures that I disproved years ago, I might add. I disproved them on social media years ago, posted about them months ago, multiple videos on them. They're in 2 different versions of these books, both the Zack and Snyder Cult, in chapters titled Real DC Fans and Zack Ops. They've been exposed and expunged. And I saw people using them as an excuse just this last week to hate Zack Snyder fans. And again, it's like that's not even a James Gunn fan thing. That's just the people who hate Zack Snyder and will cling to whoever seems to be his antithetical opposite in all of Warner Brothers. It's Kevin Tsuchihara, then it's Walter Hamada, then it's Jeff Johns, then it's Patty Jenkins, then it's a fucking revolving door of personalities that never end up being what the studio promises they'll be or what fans hype them up to be. I'm just stoked because this was like a crisis averted, in my opinion. And I thought it was actually a pretty classy James Gunn move. And if he continues to operate this way, I've tried to say in the past that I'm trying to be positive for the Superman reboot, but I just have zero interest in all of it. If he continues to act this way, I may go out and just support the movie because I would support art I don't enjoy by artists who I want to see continue to succeed, right? Like, this is one of the first times people always say James Gunn changed after his old tweets, his old activities, his old associates. And I hadn't seen the change. He'd still kind of just been kind of petty and snarky, and he hadn't really shown me that he had changed or matured all that much. This is a very mature way to handle a situation that, looks like it would be a very emotionally charged situation. I've had people mock my dead friends in the past, and believe me, I wasn't nearly as happy to hand out free passes to people. I was like, no, fuck that guy, So he handled it pretty gracefully, all things considered, especially when you look at the way he used to handle social media interactions. If he continues to show this growth, I'm actually kind of impressed by that, and I'm in favor of it. And I would be so happy if 5 to 10 years from now, my opinion on James Gunn is completely different from what it would have been at the height of his crisis where everything was being exposed and we were finding out all those nasty things that happened. So I wanted to point this out. So we've debunked, not a Snyder fan. Even from James Gunn himself, this guy does not represent a fandom. And honestly, looking by it, he doesn't represent any fandom. He just clearly is like a dude who he goes with the flow of the algorithm. Whatever's in front of him, he just repeats louder and angrier, which is something I've covered a little bit in the past on this channel, and it's definitely in the books I'm writing, where there's just some people who get sucked into mob mentality and don't really have an opinion. They're just unwell, and they put their energy into something that makes them feel like they're part of a cause. Sometimes that cause is bullying people over superhero shit, which is the most antithetical thing ever. You know, it's like going to work at a hospital so you can kill people. Like, do you understand that the whole point of a hospital is to help people? I don't understand what you're doing here. If you like superheroes, shouldn't you be trying to help people too, instead of bullying them? I don't understand. It's very confusing. And anytime you see someone trying to use those excuses of, look, I found one weird outlier to hate an entire fandom, send him that tweet from James Gunn. Send him a clip or a screenshot from this video. I don't care. Spread the word that we should not be using a singular individual to hate an entire fandom. We should not be using outliers as a way to do something. Anytime I point out bad behavior within a fandom, I come at you with at least 20 to 100 examples. At one point, I had a compilation of 400 images on screen of horrible behavior directed at Zack Snyder. And I was still not painting any specific other fandom in a negative light. I was just saying, these are the attacks that we're facing. Here's 400 of them for proof that this isn't a isolated incident. That's a data subset you can believe in my opinion. So yeah, an odd day for unity, an odd day for good things to happen. A bad thing happened, obviously, but the silver lining here is that it turned around, and there's a sense of unity and a shocking sense of maturity from the current head of DC Studios. Classy move by James Gunn. Deeply approved, deeply appreciated. Kind of impressive, honestly. Kind of into that. Big fan of this type of behavior. Warner Brothers could have used more of this for the last, decade, frankly. Huge step in the right direction, which kind of just shows you how bad Warner Brothers has been for the last decade. That just basic common decency is a huge step in the right direction. That's how low the bar is. But you know what? Positivity is positivity. Progress is progress. You take it where you can get it. Let's be happy and let's be positive. Plus, you know what? Now I'm a little bit more trustworthy that this whole Joe Manganiello coming back as Deathstroke rumor, you know what? It might not suck. I mean, me and James Gunn don't always vibe creatively. I think we separated around the Scooby-Doo era. I liked the Scooby-Doo movies. This could be an interesting turn. If he turns out to actually be mature and handling things better than it looked like he had been in the past, that might actually not be a bad movie. I'll go ahead and say it. I would probably go out and watch that movie. I would go support it. And that's the power of just being a good person. It makes people want to believe in you and support you. It's half the reason Zack Snyder has the fans he does, is he's just actively engaging with them and trying to help them. That goes a long way. So, kudos to James Gunn. Keep up the good work.